with millions forced into shelter as waves of Iranian ballistic missiles and drone strikes targeted civilian areas across the country. And for the first time since this conflict started, those drone attacks have now caused physical damage here on Israeli soil. Dozens of people were also left injured from these attacks. It is 2 p.m. Eastern Time and 9 p.m. here in Israel. I'm Shosh Bedrosian. Let's get straight to the biggest headlines. We begin this hour with the developing news that Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei is preparing for his possible assassination by the Israelis and has secretly nominated 3 clerics as his potential successor as he continues to hide in a bunker underground, according to a new report by the New York Times. Now, the 86-year-old is also said to have appointed replacements for top military chain of command, as he fears more senior leaders could also be killed by Israel after the deaths of several high-ranking officials within the last few days. Now, the regime leader also has apparently stopped using all digital communication to avoid being detected by the Israelis. Defense Minister Israel Katz said on Thursday to reporters at the site of a direct Iranian ballistic missile hit, the supreme leader cannot continue to exist, saying Khamenei was personally giving orders to fire on hospitals and residential buildings. And meanwhile, for the first time since the conflict started last week, an Iranian drone caused significant damage to a home in Beit Sha'an in the Jordan Valley. And another drone hit an open area in the Negev this morning. Sirens sounded in the affected areas according to protocol, and no injuries were reported. Now, these bordering communities from Israel's north and south continue to also target Israelis, with the IDF saying they intercepted 40 drones just last night. And since June 13th, they've downed 470 drones. You can see that attack that happened on your screen. That's right there in the Jordan Valley that caused significant damage. And as we head into another night here in Israel, people continue to prepare for the possibility of another Iranian ballistic missile attack after the entire country was under a siren warning on Friday afternoon when the Islamic Republic launched 25 ballistic missiles at Israel. More than 40 people are now recovering from injuries after that missile made a direct hit in the city of Haifa, causing a huge explosion with large plumes of smoke. Now, 3 men, including a 16-year-old boy, are now in critical condition after experiencing serious shrapnel injuries from that attack. You can see that explosion on your screen right now. A 51-year-old woman from Carmiel in the north of Israel also died from a heart attack as the sirens were sounding on Friday. And also overnight in central Israel, there was another Iranian ballistic missile attack, but no direct impacts were made and missiles were intercepted by the IDF, according to the military. However, fragments that fell from the interception sparked a large fire on the roof of a 4-story building in Holon. No one was reportedly injured, but experts are continuing to raise concern that Iran may be using multiple warheads on their missiles now. And in major news today, Defense Minister Israel Katz says the man responsible for funding and arming Hamas ahead of October 7th massacre, the commander of the Palestinian division of the IRGC's Quds Force, Saeed Izzadi, was killed this morning. Documents obtained by Israeli intelligence earlier this year reportedly shows Hamas leaders asking Izzadi and his force for support to invade Israel, including $500 million for destroying the state of Israel. Now, according to Katz, Izzadi accepted the request because, quote, the struggle against Israel and the U.S. is the top priority for the Iranian regime. Now, IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir says on Izzadi's hands is the blood of thousands of Israelis, saying he was a confidant of Hamas terrorists and commanders Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Def. Israel also continues to strike targets deep inside of Iran, eliminating commanders of the IRGC and scientists associated with their nuclear program and hitting critical infrastructure like missile launchers, according to the military. The IDF says they are continuing to suppress the regime's surface-to-surface missiles fire and said about 50% of the Iranian ballistic missile launchers were hit. And now President Donald Trump spoke with reporters at Bedminster Friday afternoon, saying Israel is doing well in terms of the war and indicated he doesn't want to ask Israel to stop airstrikes on the regime. Now, when a reporter asked what role the United States would play if they did get involved in this conflict, he says Israel has limited capacity but can't go down deep in regards to the Fordo nuclear facility in Iran. which sits literally in a cave 300 feet underground. And when asked if the United States getting involved is the biggest decision of his presidency, here's what President Trump had to say.
Is this the biggest decision you'll have to make as president?
Well, I can't tell you that. I have to see what happens. I can't, really say that. It depends what the decision is. But I wouldn't really be able to tell you that now. I'll tell you in about a year from now, maybe 5 years or 10 years from now. You never know about decisions. You never really know.
Did the Europeans help at all in talking with the Iranians?
No, they didn't help. No. Iran doesn't want to speak to Europe. They want to speak to us. Europe is not going to be able to help in this one.
20 years ago, you were skeptical of a Republican administration that attacked a Middle East country on the idea of questionable intelligence of weapons of mass destruction. How is this moment different with Iran?
Well, there were no weapons of mass destruction. I never thought there were. And that was somewhat pre-nuclear. There was a nuclear age, but nothing like it is today. And it looked like I'm right about the material that they've gathered already. It's a tremendous amount of material. And I think within a matter of weeks, or certainly within a matter of months.
And joining us now to discuss this is Kalev Ben David, the anchor for ILTV's Security Brief. Kalev, tell me, what do you make of these comments President Trump made just Friday afternoon? Does it tell us anything about how the United States could possibly get involved? We're learning that there is kind of this 2-week window mark that President Trump made.
I think you have to distinguish between President Trump's words, which are designed primarily to get a message across to the Iranians, and the actions of the United States. Obviously, listening to those comments, it sounds like President Trump is simply just keeping his options open at this point, not committing either way to a U.S. strike or not. But at the same time, this is happening. The reports that the U.S. has sent a half dozen of its B-2 bombers. Those are the big bombers that can carry the 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs you would need to take out the Fordo plant. Those half dozen B-2 bombers flew to Guam, the U.S. base in the Pacific Ocean, which would put them in range of Iran. They may be on their way to the U.S. base in Diego Garcia, an island in the Indian Ocean, even closer to Iran. So clearly, the U.S. is getting its forces in position for a possible strike on Iran. It's letting the world know about it, and President Trump is really just hammering home to Iran. Time is running out. You have to make your decision soon.
I want to talk about the mood here in Israel. People are really acting as if they will be under constant Iranian ballistic missile attacks at some point throughout the day. People making sure they have shelters near them at all times. I actually want to show you some video right now, Kalev, that I actually recorded last night of Shabbat that was taking place underground in a parking garage here in central Israel. People clearly working to make sure that no routine or no tradition is broken. Talk to me about just the feel for so many Israelis here and what's going through their mind as this conflict progresses.
Well, look, this is a stress and a strain on Israelis. I mean, we've seen the impact, the deadly impact of these ballistic missiles. You mentioned that one of the UAVs, the explosive drones of Iran, finally got through. We should note, though, they fired somewhere in the area of about 1,000 of these drones, and this is apparently the first one to make a direct impact on a home. And the family was, unlike, say, directed from a ballistic missile, which could take down an entire building, that drone hit directly into the home, and the residents were in their safe room and were they were not injured from it, or certainly not seriously. So the drones, as much as they are not as much as a threat as the ballistic missiles. And like the mood of Israelis, it reminds me. You talk about going to the metro stations in Tel Aviv. It's like the Blitz in London. We know how devastating that experience could be for people night after night, people with families having to go. We know there are still many Israelis, unfortunately, living in homes that don't have protected rooms. And that's a problem that the government has to address. But at the same time, Shosh, you do see the Israeli public rallying. You see thousands of Israelis trying to get back home every day now that the El Al is running these flights, these return flights, bringing back home. We see some semblance. People are going back to work. The Home Front Command did give the order to people to go back to work if they have access to a shelter. just anecdotally, my health club would just send out a notice right before the Sabbath, right before Shabbat, saying that they're going to reopen on a limited basis tomorrow. So people are trying to live on, even though they're dealing with this threat, this director thing. And look at that footage. Yes, as I said, to me, this just calls to mind the London during World War II, the Nazi Blitz, and just how people rallied and pulled through in those difficult circumstances.
Right. It's really unbelievable looking at this video. I was in there last night with these Israelis. A lot of them do have bomb shelters, but they actually just decided to come to support. You see them making motzi right there. It's an act of defiance. And you see people staying in there, and you know what? They don't seem disturbed. It seems as if there's like this underground community that has actually been built. They're just there to support each other. A lot of people who really have their own shelters at home just came to uplift each other. You can just see how serious they're taking it, and that it doesn't matter, what attacks could happen. Life still goes on, and it will go on. I want to specifically talk about some reports that are out there, Kalev, in regards to Iran's attacks and the types of missiles that they're using. There's been reports that they are possibly using missiles that have multiple warheads. Can you explain this to us? What does this mean exactly?
Well, that means within the warhead of a ballistic missile, instead of one big payload, they have several smaller payloads, like sort of mini missiles that before the impact of the rocket itself, these spread out and hit the ground over a wider area. So there's, on one hand, they can damage and impact on a greater area of the ground. But there's another side of it, because the payload is separated into several different payloads. It doesn't have the impact of a single impact of one of those ballistic missiles hit directly. For example, I've heard some of the experts here say that it's unlikely that these individual payloads of the multi-warhead missiles can break through a protected room, whereas we know a ballistic missile payload, if it's a direct hit, a single one can break through a what we call a protected room in Israel. It just underscores, though, the importance of people getting into some kind of shelter or protected space. And you reported on that strike in Haifa the other day. Apparently, all of the injured in that strike were people who had not gone into a protected room or space, and the only fatalities we had were 2 fatalities out of the some 2 dozen, because though that was the one example of a ballistic missile hitting a direct hit on a residence. So these weapons are dangerous, but if people can do what they can, and if you live in a home without it, people should try to find relatives, and many have. I have an apartment in Bat Yam. I'm speaking to you from Jerusalem. I was there the other day, and the building was almost empty. So people have apparently sort of debunked to try to find relatives or places where they could go where they had access to a protected space or shelter.
Right. Kalev Ben David, thank you so much for joining us with all these developments continuing to come out.
A pleasure, and to our viewers, stay safe. And if in Israel, stay safe.
Thanks so much. And as all of this news continues to unfold, like we have reported, we have more guests, more analysts to break this all down for you. Right now, joining us now on this panel is Nati Tubian, a renowned Iranian analyst, and Jason Brodsky, a policy director at United Against Nuclear Iran. Both of you, thank you so much for joining. The first question I really want to ask you, it's what's on everyone's mind here in Israel. Is the United States going to get involved in this conflict? And we know that Donald Trump just said he will make a decision within the next 2 weeks. As we're learning, there could be some type of diplomatic solutions they are pushing for. The Islamic Republic is threatening that if the U.S. does get involved militarily, there will be serious consequences. Why is it taking so long to make a decision at this point?
Jason, please.
Sure. Well, it's great to be with you both. I would say that I sense that President Trump is nearing a decision to strike the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. Those are where all the signals have been pointing. I think that the diplomacy has hit a dead end. The president recognizes it. His team likely recognizes it. I think he's trying to show the public that he's given every opportunity to the Islamic Republic to say yes to a deal. But the Islamic Republic has been resistant and has been trying to stall for time, and had initially wanted to lure President Trump into a JCPOA 2.0, despite him repudiating that very same agreement in 2018. But he demonstrated to the Iranians that he has his own principles and standards for a deal, and he's not going to get boxed in by their red lines. So with their rejection and their underestimation that a deadline is a deadline, I think that President Trump is preparing and setting the table for a strike.
How long does that process usually take, though, to make a decision, to have everything in order? We are learning at this hour that 6 B-2 stealth bombers appear to be on their way to the U.S. Air Force Base in Guam. We know that these types of aircrafts can actually carry 2 15-ton bunker buster bombs, and only the U.S. possesses them. Talk to me about how this could be impacting, the procedures the United States could be taking to go forward with a possible strike.
Well, I think that the president and his team are likely want the Iranians to see the B-2s getting into position, carrying an ordnance, getting ready to undertake an operation, because that is a part of coercive diplomacy, to brandish threats, and also the ongoing military campaign that Israel has been enduring and has been undertaking on Iranian soil, to try to force the Republic to make a choice. But right now, it seems the Islamic Republic would prefer military action over zero enrichment in Iran.
Interesting. Now, Nati, do you agree with that? What's your take on that?
I think we are witnessing another smoke screen launched by Donald Trump. And to my personal opinion, I think one of the reasons that President Trump has given a 2-week deadline until he makes his decision is because he wants to make sure that no American aircraft will be harmed as a result of any Iranian air defense activity. I just saw an item. I'm waiting for the verification of, official sources, that all the installations around Fordo, including the air defense systems, IRGC, and the regular army posts, and all the logistic facilities have been targeted and destroyed. Maybe President Trump was waiting to hear this news, and finally will make his decision.
Talking about these B-2 bombers, how critical could these types of weapons be for Israel's operation, specifically targeting that Fordo facility? Do you think it's possible Israel can do without this type of aircraft?
Well, as if we don't have enough distractions, the French daily Le Figaro has published that if Israel says that America is not interested in interfering or intervening making the final blow, Israel may use its nuclear tactical bombs to destroy Fordo, although other commentators have denied, and I don't think so. This will be a global precedent, since World War II, using any kind of nuclear weapon. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
Right. I think we're really in this uncharted territory at the moment because we're in this middle space right now. I'm sure both of you can agree. What are we in the middle of something? Are we just at the beginning of something? Someone asked me that question the other day. Where does everyone stand in the conflict right now? And I don't think it's been determined yet. Today, an Iranian official actually said discussions and proposal with European diplomats that took place in Geneva about Iran's nuclear program were actually unrealistic, and insists that this will bring both sides closer to an agreement. Meanwhile, the Turkish president said today that resuming Iranian and U.S. talks on Tehran's nuclear program was the only way to achieve a solution here. Now, Israeli officials said early on in this operation they are at the point of no return. So why are European countries working to be involved in this? Do they really think they can reach a diplomatic solution at this point in time?
I think the biggest fear of the European countries is that in case of following the Iranian regime, all Europe will witness. It's not a flow; it's a flood of refugees and drugs throughout, Europe. Abbas Araghchi, who's now the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Iranian regime, as his position, as Javad Zarif's deputy, had an interview a few years ago, and he specifically threatened Europe. And he said, if the sanctions are not lifted, and all our efforts regarding stopping the refugees to cross Iran and move to Europe, and all the efforts that we put to stop the delivering all these drugs to Europe costs us money. And if the Europeans do not make their best to lift all the sanctions, we'll have no choice but just to let all the dams and barriers be open, and what happens after that.
Right. Jason, talk to me more just about your thoughts of what it could signal. I know you said it could give time for preparation, or it could even be a method or a tactic the U.S. is using to move these B-2 bombers. But in terms of using them, how will it help Israel's operation? And once and if they work together, the United States and Israel, what would their objective be in Iran? Would it be to see the fall of this regime?
Well, first of all, I think that we have to all acknowledge that diplomacy has failed. The Iranians stalled and rejected the offers from President Biden to revive the JCPOA, and they've also stalled and rejected President Trump's offer. And I think that that is a bipartisan rejection that the Iranians have made twice now. And so we have to internalize the message and take no for an answer, and stop chasing after Tehran, because I think that it signals to them a desperation and an avoidance of making a hard choice to undertake military action. But President Trump has we have to be very quite honest here. President Trump has done something in terms of greenlighting Israel's operation a few days ago that has been really unprecedented in the history of the U.S. Islamic Republic relations. No other American president has ever made such a move, with the real exception probably of Ronald Reagan in 1987 with Operation Praying Mantis, when the United States took out basically half of the Islamic Republic's navy. That's the closest parallel we have to what's going on here. So I think that if the U.S. were to get involved, and I do think the U.S. is getting ready to get involved, it will use the B-2 to use the massive ordnance penetrator against the Fordow nuclear facility. I can see the United States trying to clean up and make sure that some of the other nuclear sites throughout Iran, like Natanz, the Isfahan nuclear facility, and as well as some other sites, have been fully destroyed while it's at it, because I just don't think that it's just going to be focused on Fordow, and just to make sure Israel has done the maximum damage that we can to the program to set it back for as long as possible. And I also would not rule out the United States undertaking strikes to prevent the Islamic Republic from being able to retaliate against U.S. forces in the region. as that would prevent the very escalation that President Trump wants to avoid. So I think that those are potential targets that are on the menu for the United States to pursue in Iran. I would say that President Trump is likely not to pursue a regime change policy. I think that his mission will be narrow and tightly focused on destroying the nuclear program and the Islamic Republic's ability to retaliate from the U.S. Use of force against the Islamic Republic. So that's the way I see this playing out.
Now, Nati, you mentioned before, as this operation of Israel continues inside of Iran, and if the United States does get involved, what this could mean for the population inside of Iran, right? The human toll, refugees specifically, if there were some type of nuclear bombing that continues inside of Iran. I want to ask you, what is the mindset? What is the mood amongst Iranians right now inside of the country? I do want to know and tell our viewers there is a major internet blackout that's happening there. It is very complicated for people outside of Iran to actually reach their family members inside. I just had an Iranian yesterday reach out to me, send me a very emotional voice note. It was his birthday, that he could not reach his family who evacuated Tehran. And he was, pleading to me saying, what can I do? And we just discussed what his feelings are like in this very moment, living under this regime. But talk to me about what you're hearing inside right now.
Well, since Iran is not a free country for now, and since we cannot have any polls regarding, the real feelings of the population, we can only assume what the Iranians feel according to what they publish at the social media. Basically, we can divide it to a few groups. The first group, of which I'm not sure how many people are, but we may presume that there is a significant amount of Iranian population. They only prayed for all these bombings, and they think that only outside intervention, outside military intervention can weaken the regime and pave the way for all the protesters and anti-regime activists to come to the streets and topple the regime. Other Iranians, of course, at the opposite side are the harsh supporters of the regime, probably not more than 20% of the whole population, whose survival depends on the survival of the regime, whether they believe in the regime ideologically or financially. And among these people, we can include all the IRGC top commanders and other economic foundations run by either IRGC or the leader himself. And the other group is probably the vast majority of the Iranian people who just don't know what will happen. They are, they have no access to the ATMs. The distribution of the bread has been rationed. Any single person can buy not more than 10 loaves of bread, and I think that this will escalate as long as this regime, this regime exists, and even before the attacks has brought Iran to this dire situation which it is for now. But on the other hand, there are also other Iranians who are not, who are also against the regime, but also against any foreign intervention. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Still, you mentioned the total blockade of the internet. We still have some flow of information from inside Iran. whether because brief breaks of the total shutdown or because of Elon Musk's Starlink, which has been deployed in a very limited amount across Iran.
Right. I want to read you, Nati, and Jason, just part of this statement that I received from an Iranian who didn't want to identify himself, of course, for fear of what could happen to his family inside of Iran. But part of it reads this, quote, "Please remember this as you witness these turbulent days. The regime in Tehran does not speak for the people of Iran. The people of Iran have no enemy except those who have taken their freedom, silenced their cries, and broken their families. We long for the day when this regime is gone. We long for the day when every parent can speak to their child across borders and across oceans, when every family can live free from fear, when every person can walk their streets without terror looming over them." How common is it to find someone inside of Iran in large cities like Tehran who actually agree with Israel's operation that's ongoing inside of there? Both of you can answer this, whoever wants to go first. We'll start with
I
you,
will
Jason.
start first.
Well, sure, I'm happy to take.
Please, Jason.
Okay, sure. Okay, Nati, I'll take it, and then you can respond. In terms, I think it's actually pretty likely because some of the targets that Israel is pursuing in Iran are against the same repressive apparatus that has abused and tortured the Iranian people for decades. So I think that there are many Iranians sitting quietly at home, watching the scenes, and are quietly supportive of some of these efforts to hold the Islamic Republic accountable. Now, I think there's some mixed emotions as well, because the Iranian people, on the same token, don't want to see their country destroyed and are very fearful of the bombings and the dislocation and the displacement that some of this has caused. So I think that there are some mixed emotions and some competing feelings here. But I would say that that kind of being conflicted in that sense resonates probably with many Iranians over there. There is a segment of the population that still supports the regime, a very small minority. I think it's important to recognize that. But on the whole, the Iranian people want to see the Islamic Republic gone. I think that they have made that very clear over the last several years with a series of protest movements throughout the country, that the Islamic Republic does not speak for them, does not represent them, and the Islamic Republic is not out for their best interests. And so that's very important. I would say that I do think it's really important for Israel to be very sophisticated in the way it engages in public diplomacy with directed towards Iranians, because Iranians can. There's a risk that the more bombings and the longer that this takes place, that they lose the hearts and minds of Iranians because of a lot of the fear that's going on right now in the population, because they feel that the Islamic Republic has no regard for them, and they're left and they have no protection. No one's protecting them. So I do think it's important for Israel to engage in some very sophisticated public diplomacy towards Iranians, and to be cognizant of that mindset and very cautious as they move forward. I know Israel is very cautious, but as someone who's a friend of Israel, I think that that is something that's in Israel's best interest as well, because I know that Israeli leaders believe that the Iranian people are natural allies of Israel and the Jewish people, as they have been throughout history. There's a long, rich history of Iranians and Jews collaborating and having wonderful relations. In pre-revolutionary Iran, Israeli prime ministers used to visit Iran secretly, and a lot of people have forgotten that, and that's something that could happen in the future under a different regime. But this is something that is important to keep in mind as we witness the scenes that are playing out in Iran.
Right. And of course, so many people inside of Iran are affected, but also there's a massive diaspora in the United States, in Los Angeles. Of course, in New York City, there's a huge Iranian Jewish population as well. So many of them long one day to go back to Tehran to live that golden age life they used to have. Nati, tell me a little bit more about that as well.
Well, I would like to draw our attention to Mehdi Nasiri. He was the former editor-in-chief of the daily Kayhan, which is the mouthpiece of the regime. Some say that The Kehan, editor-in-chief, speaks what's on the leader's mind, and he's now become one of the loudest oppositions against the current regime. He is a former religious scholar. He is religious, but I would like to simultaneously translate his recent post on Facebook. He's shown Saeed Izzadi's hiding place, and he says, "Look at this picture. Israel eliminated Saeed Izzadi, one of the Quds Force commanders and one of the supporters of the October 7th attack. But look at the picture. Israel hit only his floor. It means that Israel did not demolish the whole building to kill Saeed Izzadi. Not the floor above, not the floor below. Now," and he turns to the Islamic Republic, "now you keep sending your Sejil and Fateh missiles to residential areas in Haifa and Tel Aviv and to the hospital in Beersheba." I think this says it all.
Wow, very, very powerful. And you're right, Nati,
Yes.
because when we saw the initial operation of Israel begin inside of Iran, we saw these buildings that were clearly targeting these senior commanders or government officials of the Islamic Republic, right? But the floors were the only things impacted. There were fires inside of them, but the rest of the building stood. I've heard from some people here in Israel, the level of precision is so beyond, most people can't even comprehend how long Israel and the IDF and other people have been studying this moment. This is the moment that they're in. There's been people dedicated to actually studying each person that was eliminated by Israel. But yes, the damage here in Israel is very concerning, and it's very shocking for most people. They feel as if these Iranian ballistic missiles are a bit like Russian roulette. Is it going to hit me tonight? Is it going to hit my building tomorrow, my neighbors? Let's have this in the safe room. You know, we mentioned before, Kalev actually mentioned this, not everyone in Israel has a miklat, a protected space, a bomb shelter inside of their homes. So they're running up and down sometimes 11 floors, 11 flights of stairs just to get to their basements because they truly don't know if it will be them next. And that's how everyone is really living, the fear of, will it be me next? And we've seen the types of destruction specifically in these older buildings in places like Bat Yam, even in Ramat Gan just the other day. These old buildings take such a serious hit compared to these high-rise ones. And of course, most people have their shelters in there as well. That moves over to my next question. I want to talk about specifically the ballistic missiles that Iran is using right now. We're hearing that it's possible they are using missiles with multiple warheads or even some type of cluster bomb. Jason, we'll start with you. Talk to me. Is this what you're hearing as well? And what can show us, what clues do we have here that can indicate that this is what's being used?
Well, I think the IDF came out and said that there have been cluster munitions that have been used, and those are very, very dangerous and damaging munitions. And so also the Iranians are using very heavy warheads. They're using much more sophisticated missiles as well as this goes on. I think that we have to not rule out that the Iranians will try to launch some kind of variation of a hypersonic missile at Israel eventually during this volley. So I think that the Iranians have steadily increased the lethality of the kinds of missiles that they're employing and throughout this process. And also, let's not forget that they want to keep some missiles in reserve potentially if they need to try to strike U.S. assets in retaliation for any American response that if the U.S. just engages in targeted airstrikes against Tehran. So this is something to definitely keep in mind.
Yeah, and I'm actually just hearing right now that more than 2 million Israelis actually lack a proper protected space. But going back to this warhead, this cluster ammunition that, Jason, you were just mentioning, Nati, tell me what you know specifically, and just in regards to that. Last night here in Israel, there was a siren that sounded in central Israel specifically. Nearly all of the ballistic missiles were intercepted. However, a fragment from that interception landed on a roof in Holon. We're going to play that video, and it sparked a massive fire. Could this be one of the munitions from this multiple warhead or cluster munition that Jason's referring to?
Look, the percentage of the intercepting by the Israeli air defense system is phenomenal. I mean, above 90%. I don't know anything like it in the whole world. But regarding your questions, yes, the cluster missile is called Khorramshahr 4. At the altitude of around 7 kilometers above ground, its warhead splits to dozens of mini rockets and they disperse, and cover a vast area. The former commander-in-chief of the IRGC, Mohsen Rezai, said that in addition to usage of this cluster missile that is contrary, this is my note, use of any cluster weapon is against any war convention, just to let us all know. But he also added that Iran uses Fatah hypersonic missiles and also Sejil, one of its heaviest missiles produced so far by the Iranian regime.
Almost out of time, but I want to get final thoughts from both of you. I think both of your perspectives on what's happening and what could happen is really important. Jason, we'll start with you. We have a short amount of time, but just let's everyone hear your thoughts.
Well, I think that what we're witnessing really is the failure of Ali Khamenei's grand strategy in many respects. For years, he has sought to keep the conflict between Iran and Israel away from Iranian borders, and has used his terror proxies to achieve that end. And he calculated that the benefits of doing so outweigh the costs, which were absorbable or in many cases non-existent. The same goes with his war against the United States that he's been waging in various ways since 1979. And I think that as we're seeing these absolutely surreal pictures of fires and explosions in Tehran, I think the chickens have come home to roost for Ali Khamenei. It really is a great failure of his strategy, because he always prided himself in keeping war away from the Iranian homeland after the Iran-Iraq War concluded in 1988. And what we're seeing now is just a failure of the Iranian strategy, and that is something that will have reverberations around Iran and the region for years to come. I can't underestimate. I can't estimate this enough. Emphasize this enough with respect to Iran. What we're seeing is historic, and it's going to have very significant. It's going to reshape the region.
Nati, your final thoughts in just a quick 30 seconds,
Yes,
if possible.
Yes, of course. It is. I think, to my humble opinion, it's still too premature to tell where all this is going. But eventually, you reap what you sow. If from the establishment of this regime, the main slogan was that Israel should be wiped out of the face of the earth, and the day after signing the JCPOA, the RGC launches missiles, on which we see the slogan in Hebrew letters: Israel should be wiped out of the face of the earth. It's, I'm still being cautious. It took almost 2 weeks for Ahmad al-Shar to come to Syria and topple the Syria, and we are at the 9th of this operation. So good. We can only hope that this will continue. And although the Israeli officials don't say about anything about regime change, and they say that it may be one of the consequences of this operation, all the evidence show that Israel is going for the head of this snake, which is
Thank
the
you.
Iranian.
Thank you both so much for joining me. Sorry to cut you off there. We are out of time, but both of you, thank you so much for joining us, giving us your perspectives today.
Thank you.
And that is a wrap here on ILTV on the Hour. Thank you so much for joining us at this time. Continue to follow us for more updates as this war with Iran continues.